Hello, our esteemed viewers, and welcome to our top-notch education consultancy programs. First and foremost, let me wish you a happy Easter. I hope you had a very good Friday, Easter Friday, and you've had your Saturday and Sunday, and today we are on a Monday. So I would want to still wish you a happy Easter as we continue to present our programs to you. I believe that you're now aware of the kind of setbooks that we deal with. So far, we have dealt with Fathers of Nations. We have also dealt with the Samaritan Silent Song, and we are also discussing Parliament of Owls. And I believe that you find our programs beneficial to our students back at school, and we want you to continue to project this to our students while you are at school so that learning becomes easier. You know, the visuals these days are more accessible to our students more than what we tell them. So sometimes we make these videos to make your work easier and also to help our students to internalize the text a little bit more easier for them. So this morning I would want us to discuss again an area in Fathers of Nations. And there is a character that I haven't discussed or I haven't made a video on, that is Fiona McKenzie. I believe that you know Fiona McKenzie is a critical character in this text. Is one of the few female characters. Remember, we don't have so many female characters in this text. We only have Asia Omondi. We also have Tuni. We also have Pamela and Ziliza, the wife to Comrade Gumbile Melusi. And Fiona is actually one of them. Fiona is educated, is a journalist with the Gambian News, and is a news reporter. And so when we meet her for the first time, there is an interview between her and Dr. Abiola Afolabi. Remember, Dr. Abiola Afolabi has been appointed by the presidents to advise them on Way Omega. So Fiona gets the opportunity to interview Dr. Afolabi on the summit that is coming, that has been organized by African heads of state to discuss Way Omega. So in this case, that is the first instance where we meet Fiona McKenzie. Now, before she begins the content of our interview, she actually introduces herself to Dr. Afolabi and tells Dr. Afolabi that she was adopted by the McKenzie family when the parents died while she was still very young. And therefore, she's a lady who is very proud of her identity. She's comfortable being an African and being a Gambian, and also the bit that she was adopted by the Mackenzies. And therefore, there is this confusion that people can't really place her, because when they look at the color of her skin, she is black, but the accent is actually Scottish, and they wonder what is the relationship between her color and probably the kind of accent that she's got. But one thing that you need to know is that around this we get to know something about adoption, which is critical in this text, that it is not a must that you get children through the natural ways. You can also be adopted, like Fiona was adopted by the Mackenzies. We've also had the same case when Dr. Afolabi, the same person that is interviewing here, and the white lady Pamela had actually opted that she would actually adopt children because she believes that Africa already has quite a number of children, so there is no need to add more. So the theme, the issue of adoption is very critical in this text, and therefore it is being brought out very well by Fiona McKenzie when she begins to give us what we call her background. Again, we realize there is an issue of identity. She's very proud of her African identity. She's a proud African and would want to be so and be identified as so. She's a Gambian, and therefore she's an African. And that comes out very clearly during that point where she tries to introduce herself so that she makes that rapport between herself and Dr. Abiola Afolabi. Then from there now, she continues to interview Dr. Abiola Afolabi, and during the interview we realize that she's a very intelligent and knowledgeable woman, because for one, she's aware that Dr. Afolabi has written a book, Failure of States. That is important and critical, and that makes her a very knowledgeable character. That means she reads a lot, and she's aware that Dr. Afolabi has written a book. He's also aware that Dr. Afolabi went to Harvard University. So that background tells us that she's a very knowledgeable person, so that when she begins to interview Dr. Afolabi, we are also aware that she is extremely knowledgeable. Now, when she continues the interview, we realize that intelligent bit of her, because there is at that place where she begins to connect the book, that is Failure of States, and Dr. Abiola Afolabi's optimism because of the summit that is coming. So Fiona asks Dr. Afolabi what makes him now very optimistic about the summit, while in his book there is a lot of pessimism. I think this is the point where Dr. Afolabi gets angry and begins now not to hate her and begin to call her names, because she's actually branded his book pessimistic. But Fiona is able to see that there is some pessimism in the book, and therefore she cannot really relate this pessimism with the optimistic nature of Dr. Afolabi in this context. And therefore there is a disagreement, and even as they disagree, she continues to ask questions very intelligently. She doesn't want that bit of disagreement between Dr. Afolabi and herself, and that is why she feels that there is also another time that they can meet and talk about the summit. And so Fiona is a very intelligent woman, even as a journalist. Of course, at the end of it all, she actually begs to leave because her boss has called her, and therefore she leaves. Of course, they have disagreed with Dr. Afolabi over that, and Dr. Afolabi calls her a firefighter and calls her names, that she's a third-rate Gambian news reporter, but that doesn't actually affect her as much. So that is the first instance that we meet Fiona McKenzie. The second time we meet Fiona McKenzie is when she's getting back to her office, and she's taken a taxi to her office. What happens is that, the heads of states are meeting in Banjul, and therefore there is a problem with traffic, and there are also roadblocks all over to make sure that they do the security checks. So at one of the security checks, they are hailed by the police officer or the people who are guarding those roadblocks, and actually in the process we realize there is corruption and bribery, because they have taken the driver to a corner and they have turned him upside down, and that is what the text says, that the driver has been turned upside, the taxi driver has been turned upside down, and she's actually to produce some bribe before they move with Fiona to her office. And that comes out very well, bribery and corruption, and we see this through the character of Fiona McKenzie. Then from there now, they drive off, and Fiona is asking what happened, and the taxi driver is angry about the whole thing, because the accusation was that there was some problem with his brakes, and yet there wasn't anything wrong with the vehicle, and he's wondering why actually was to be stopped. And therefore, that is the second interaction that we have between us, the readers, and Fiona McKenzie. Now, the third case that we can also bring to the fore in this text is, again, we meet him when Leo, the Liberian Maula, attacks her. I think you have interacted yourself with that scenario. They are at the Seamount Hotel, and Leo comes and begins to assault her. Maybe Leo wanted some relationship, but Fiona did not want that, and therefore Fiona tries to shout or to scream to get some help, and of course she gets some help when Dr. Afolabi comes along and rescues her from the hands of Leo, the Liberian Maula. So from there again we can see the theme of corruption or immorality in one way or the other, because we are told that this is a common practice around here. Maybe prostitution is around that place, this is a Seamount Hotel, and that is why Fiona was around, and we see Leo coming in, and also trying to assault her in one way or the other, because she's not been able to accept what Leo wanted. So in this case, we can see some level of immorality, but again, she's been rescued by Dr. Abiola Afolabi. We can also see some aspect of violence against women, because if you study the character of Leo, it is like she's actually asserting unnecessary authority, that kind of violence against Fiona McKenzie. So we can also learn that from that instance when we meet Fiona McKenzie. Of course, she's been rescued by Dr. Abiola Afolabi, and they go to Abiola's room, and actually there is some first aid that she offers Dr. Afolabi, and she also tries to make herself a little comfortable after that assault by the Liberian Maula, and that is Leo. So that is the third time that we meet Fiona McKenzie. And after that, there is also that meeting between Fiona McKenzie and Nick Sintanel and also Mr. Manley. When they meet again, that is now when she's been transferred from loaned, not actually transferred, from the Gambian News to VOK, Voice of America. So she's been loaned, and she's going to work for the Voice of America for 2 years. And we also learned something about that, because it looks like the Gambian News was paying her peanuts, very little money. So she's now transferring to Voice of America, where she's going to get quite some good money. And that tells you the level of sometimes mistreatment that comes from these newsrooms. They pay very little, especially the African newsrooms. So that bit comes out, and it's something that it is worth noting. So she interacts with Nick Sintanel and Mr. Manley in their office, and it is from there that we realize that she's not very apt when it comes to technology. She's a bit naive, because she doesn't understand a lot when it comes to the technology that is being brought about by Nick Sintanel, talking about the silent listener here, and how the silent listener is able to eavesdrop onto conversations, or what we call the private conversation. The silent listener was able to eavesdrop about their interview, and also about the guide together with the 4 strangers that actually had arrived at the Seamount Hotel. So it tells you something about neo-colonialism and how America actually prefects the world using technology. So modern technology becomes a theme here. At the same time, the bit of neo-colonialism also comes out, because it looks like America is able to prefect the world silently, even when you're not watching. America, in a way, tries to monitor whatever you're doing. Like now, they are aware of the African head of state meeting in Banjul, and they have a lot of interest in this meeting, because they know that when Africans unite, then they have a problem. When African is disunited, then they will get it very easy. So they are already dropping into the affairs of Africa. That is why they are already aware of the 4 strangers that have arrived at the Seamount Hotel, and they're also aware of the ongoings and the security issues that are happening at the summit. So that brings neo-colonialism, as I've said. It also brings the bit that we have new technology that can make our lives a little better. So that is again a moment where we meet Fiona McKenzie, and finally we meet Fiona when the summit is over and they're leaving the Pinnacle Hotel, or the Pinnacle conference room where the meeting was going on. And at that level, again, we are told that they were holding hands with Dr. Abiola. So that is the last time we meet Fiona, and it should be imperative that we understand Fiona in that context and the themes that she's been able to bring out in this context. So, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, we want to welcome you to our programs. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, kindly do so, and continue enjoying our programs. Thank you, and may God bless you abundantly.